Hello, and welcome to After the Epilogue, a book podcast. From our yearly reading wrap-ups to our opinions on popular books, we are centered around anything and everything book-related. So if you're a reader like us, make sure to stay tuned. We are your hosts.
I'm Maddie.
And I'm Maya, and today we will be talking about The Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller.
Just a heads up before we start, we are going to butcher absolutely every single name, so warning.
We apologize.
Yes, we do.
Just as another heads up to our audience, the first half of today's episode will not contain spoilers, just in case you haven't read the book yet. And before we get into spoilers, we will issue a warning, so you don't have to worry. Even though The Song of Achilles is just a retelling of a 2,000-year-old Greek poem.
It is, and that poem is called The Iliad, and The Song of Achilles is a retelling of that poem with a queer twist, which many believe how the author originally intended Patroclus' and Achilles' relationship. The author, Madeline Miller, spent 10 years researching Greek mythology and history and reading different translations of the Iliad in order to write this book properly. It talks about the Trojan War and Achilles' childhood through Patroclus' perspective, which gives an interesting insight because Patroclus is written as such a pure and morally character, especially in the Song of Achilles.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, how did you first hear about the Song of Achilles, Maya?
Yeah, so Maddie and I did a Christmas annotated book exchange, and I wonderfully received The Song of Achilles.
I did that.
Yeah, it's a beautiful annotated copy. But yeah, and then I read it, and it took me like 2 days, and it was
Only
one
2
of
days?
the best books I've ever read. 2 or 3. We were on like Christmas break.
Yeah,
so
that's true.
I had lots of time, and it was so good. Could not put it down.
Okay, what's your no spoiler opinion of the book when you first read it?
10 out of 10, 100 out of 100. Actually, like 110 out of 100. 5 out of 5 stars.
Yeah.
It was so good. It was like the first book that brought me to real tears when I had finished it.
That's very interesting.
So, yeah.
It was also, is it very different? Like, how did it compare to the other books you've read in the past?
It was really well written. And, yeah, it was just a sad little story.
In my opinion, my rating of the book, obviously, 10 out of 10. If we're talking about extra credit, like 5 extra points, 10 extra points, however many, whatever scale you want to go on.
It deserves it.
I think, personally, it should be a classic.
Oh, for sure.
Just based on how well it's written and the material and kind of how they humanize the characters.
Mm-hmm.
It's beyond words. It's so amazing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's an easy read.
Yeah.
And it's really good. It's really good.
Once you get past the first part of when they're talking about his childhood and Patroclus' childhood and all the Greek mythology names, even if you don't know them, it's still very easy to understand.
Mm-hmm. It's written really well, like I said, and it uses first person excellently.
Yeah, I agree. Okay.
Now we are getting into spoilers, so I guess that wasn't half an episode.
No,
but
it's not.
Highly recommend read it. So if you haven't already, click off and come back when you're done.
Yeah. Or if you've already read the Iliad, really there's no spoilers.
Yeah.
So. Anyways.
We have already established that we loved the book. So what was your favorite part?
Oh God. My favorite part was the scene where Achilles says, name one hero who was happy.
Aww.
And then he goes, I'm gonna be the first. Oh my God, my voice broke. He says, I'm gonna be the first. And I think it's because of the foreshadowing, although it's very obvious. Reading it the first time, I did not understand that was extreme foreshadowing. Because in the Iliad, of course, everybody dies. Everybody dies in the Iliad. But in the Song of Achilles, I didn't know that it was going to go to the point where Achilles dies, or maybe I thought she was going to retell it differently. I don't know. Maybe it was me wanting to live blissfully. But I didn't know he was going to die, and then so when he said, name one hero who was happy, and then he said, I'm going to be the first, I was like, okay, yes, of course you're going to be the first. Yeah. I believed him.
Aww, that's so sad.
Which made it 3,000 times worse. It was so bad.
I read the first 4 Percy Jackson books growing up. I never got to the 5th one. I don't know. But my Greek mythology knowledge isn't great, but I knew the story of, like, Achilles' heel. Mm-hmm. So I knew he was gonna die. but I didn't know how and where
Yeah, it's
Pat
also
fit into that.
a very common fact. Pat fat? He's not fat! You
It
little
rhymes.
body shamer.
What?
Cancelled. Anyways.
Slip of the tongue.
It's
Uh-oh.
definitely a very common fact, especially on TikTok, that they both die in the end. The book, they both die in the end.
That's right there.
It is, it's right there. They don't, but anyways, you continue.
Yeah.
was
My
your favorite
favorite,
scene?
yeah, my favorite scene was when Pat went into battle because he killed a bunch of guys. He was kind of dope. You see that strength, the strength that he has. And then there was the whole foreshadowing where he talks about the wall was like impossible to climb, and then he tries to climb it, and yeah.
It's kind of like the pinnacle of his arc.
Yes.
How he goes from this weak, homely...
And then he dies.
Don't even. He goes from this weak, homely person to this person who's able to kill the son of Zeus.
Yeah.
Which Achilles hadn't even done.
He slays.
He slays.
Favorite characters?
Pat, obviously.
Yeah.
Pat, a lot of people come at me for defending Achilles, but I think it's because of, in comparison to Pat, Pat is just such a good person who, even by modern standards, people are like, oh yeah, he's a pretty awesome person.
Yeah.
And I'm talking about in the Song of Achilles. We're not going to talk about his other Greek history. I'm talking about in the Song of Achilles, he's shown as a extremely moral person.
Achilles?
No,
Or
Pat.
Yeah.
By the way, we're calling Patroclus Pat.
Yeah, because it's easier to say.
His name's a tongue twister sometimes.
Yeah, definitely Pat, because of that moral compass. He is just such a pure character. And it's told through his perspective, so we get to know him well.
Yeah.
And so that helps. But some honorable mentions. Achilles' dad. King
Peleus?
Yeah, sure.
He was just probably one of the best parents I've seen in Greek mythology, because there's not a lot of good ones.
Yeah.
And especially Thetis, even though she wasn't a good person at all. Obviously, we know that. She's kind of the antagonist of this book, but she does everything to try to protect her son.
Yeah. And I think we see with the king, like, he always treats Pat with respect. He is a good parent. We see that in how Achilles grows up and how he's raised.
Even when Pat's trying to go after Achilles, he kind of caves in. He's like, here's where my son is.
Yeah.
I know you love him.
Yeah.
I know there's something going on between you two. Y'all are gay.
And then Briseis is
Yeah.
great. I feel she makes the honorable mention list.
I think kind of because she just tells it as it is. She says the facts, says the truth, especially when Pat dies.
Yeah. So, Achilles' opinion.
Oh, God. People hate me for this.
Yeah.
Like, it's a well-known fact.
They're gonna hate both of us for this.
Well, I'm really glad you're here to defend me, but reading this book, if you find a huge fault in Achilles, I think you missed the point. Achilles is this human character who, although he has his faults, and he's obviously not a good person. No one in Greek mythology is a good person, okay? But Achilles is kind of this humanized character, and although he has his faults, he admits that he does wrong.
Yeah.
He admits that it was a mistake, that he let Briseis go, and he's also growing up with this mom who's trying to force him to become a god. And so growing up with that kind of pressure, you're going to act differently to certain situations. And I think every way he acted was kind of premeditated.
He lived up to the situations he was forced into.
Yes. I don't think it's his fault.
No. I agree. I am an Achilles apologist first and foremost. Because the situations he was put in, there was a ton of pressure on him. And, like, compared to the other characters in the book, like...
Yes. I made a TikTok, and I was like, King Agamemnon has no right to call Achilles a bad person. And people were coming at me. They were like, this girl's never read the Iliad. She knows nothing about Greek mythology. Because I said Achilles wasn't a bad person.
there was like one comment, and it was basically saying King Agamemnon was better than Achilles because Achilles was gonna, like, let him rape Briseis, but, like, he's the one raping Briseis.
What?
So...
that makes no sense.
King Agamemnon
slaughtered his daughter.
Yeah, that also happened.
Like, there wasn't, in the book, okay?
Yeah.
There was no,
also, if
guilt.
we do point down, it's because we have another copy here.
It's right here.
Yeah.
He has not a lot of guilt about killing his son. He's kind of like, I had to do it.
Yeah.
I had to do it to let the war go on. So how are people going to sit here and tell me that Achilles is a bad person, but King Agamemnon is the good person when when he did it for war and so did Achilles?
Yeah. Also, like, if you're leading a war and you're really relying on this guy, might as well just own up and apologize. I mean, Achilles could have also, like, gone and just fought the war, but you're in charge here.
Yeah. They were both, Achilles and King Agamemnon, they hated each other, but they were both super prideful.
Yes.
But I do think that because of King Agamemnon's pride, and since he's the leader, he's supposed to be the leading role.
Yes.
He should have owned up to it.
Yes. And I think, again, Achilles and his pride, that was really forced onto him, especially in his later years.
Yeah.
By his mother.
He was forced to be prideful.
Yeah, because we see him when he's younger, and when him and Pat first meet, he's playing with all the other boys that he is higher than, being the prince. And just everybody's equal. Everyone's on an equal playing field. And that pride was definitely forced because we see it we see him change and him grow through the war. And, like, again, he was in a war. Like,
yeah.
They were fighting a war. Ethics, morals, they're at war.
There were millions of people getting killed.
Yeah.
1 or 2 isn't that big of a deal.
Yeah.
I'm just saying.
I mean, he killed more than 1 or 2.
Yeah.
But, yes.
Okay. Yeah. Pat and Achilles' relationship, was it toxic?
No.
If they love each other, how could it be toxic? Okay.
That is no.
No. They... I don't know how to word this. Do you have better words?
I don't think they were toxic. Are there points? What are the points that they were?
They were toxic because Achilles was prideful, I guess. I think because people think Achilles is a bad person, they assume his relationship is toxic.
That he doesn't deserve Pat.
But if Pat loves Achilles, like, good person, bad person, they fall in love. Their relationship does not automatically have to be toxic.
Yes. And I mean, I don't think Achilles is a bad person either. Yeah. But, like, their relationship, it was super sweet and wholesome. They really never even came head to head ever.
They fought, like, once, and that was over Briseis. And Pat was like, you know what, I'm going to fix this on my own.
Yeah. And he did.
It kind of had him develop. He was kind of forced to have this arc, which I think was very necessary to the story.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Do you think the way Achilles is portrayed is skewed because the story is told through Pat's eyes?
So I think he's definitely skewed a little bit because his love for him.
Yes.
His love for him is so immense and so overwhelming, and he only sees this side of Achilles that he doesn't really, no one else really sees. This good person, which is why I think the Song of Achilles, he is a good person.
Yes.
Well, he's not a bad person.
Yeah. Yes.
Because Pat thinks he's this loving person, and he does. Pat is a very good judge of character because of his moral compass, and he does admit that Achilles did something wrong. And so that's why I think he's skewed a little, obviously, because of his love. Yeah. But it's not so much that it's, like, a completely different person.
I think also, like, he knows Achilles better than anyone else. And so maybe from an outsider's perspective, like, Achilles is just a super prideful person.
Yeah.
But from someone who has known him since he was 12 and, like, grown up with him and seen Achilles grow, and that allows the reader to see Achilles grow, we know more about Achilles and are able to kind of justify his actions, whereas, like, King Agamemnon might not be able to.
I think that's kind of why Miller chose to have the story told by Pat.
And it gives him this depth, an important depth.
And it makes the ending have such a bigger meaning seeing it through Pat's eyes.
Oh, it's so good. It's so good. Yeah.
Now the ending.
Dun, dun, dun.
I have lots to say about the ending, but first.
The ending was so chaotic.
It was very chaotic.
There's a lot to say.
But first, I wanted to say that the way Madeline Miller writes this book is, although there is a very beautiful romance story, it's more about the cruelty of men in war. Mm-hmm. And I like how it kind of doesn't focus on the greatness of the gods or... trying to think of another thing to say, but it doesn't focus on everything else, but that the Trojan War was so unnecessary.
Yeah.
In that, guys, the men were just cruel for absolutely no reason.
Can we just talk about the Trojan War and how they were just fighting to find some lady?
Yeah.
Who might have just ran away?
Helen. You silly little gal. What you doing that for?
There's a bunch of men just fighting for this one lady. Why? Like, at that point, I wouldn't even care.
I would not.
If I was her husband, I'd just be like...
No one was really fighting for Helen. You can keep her.
That's so mean. But, like, they didn't like women. Like, they treated... not Achilles and Pat. Not like that.
They definitely did not like women.
No, but, like, they... I mean, we see it with Briseis and the slaves.
Yeah. And
the treatment to women throughout the book. Like, they didn't care for them. They didn't care for them. Yeah. They didn't care for them at all. They were awful and cruel to them.
A lot of
So
prejudice.
Why are we fighting a whole war over one woman?
Because she was pretty and they wanted to be famous. That's the real reason.
I know.
But I like how Madeline Miller kind of clarified that, and she didn't say, oh yes, Troy was this great war that needed to be fought.
Yeah, no.
And millions of people died. Or I actually don't know how many people died in Troy. It could be thousands. I don't know. I don't think anyone does, because it's so long ago. But...
I thought you were going to say, I don't know if anyone died. I was like,
no,
Hector,
they definitely
Achilles,
did. Bad. At least in the stories. Anyways, yes, it was an unnecessary war, and that's why the ending was so sad, with Achilles dying through the arrow, and he's kind of embracing it, and Pat watching helplessly. And then Thetis's arc. What did you think of Thetis's arc?
Is it technically an arc? I mean, she hears him out, and she writes his name on the stone, and that was really important, and... I felt it showed her development well.
Yes. I think there was development, but not necessarily an arc.
Yes.
Like, it was...
Yes.
It was like a
hill.
Half,
it was...
half circle. Like, she's on the hill.
Yeah.
Because she
hasn't gotten to the other side yet.
She's the antagonist.
Yes.
All the way through the story until the very end when she releases Pat into the underworld with Achilles.
Aww.
Yeah. Aww.
There were lots of tears. I remember that from the ending. Lots of crying. I called Maddie right after I'd finished it because, like, she gave me the book. And I could not breathe because we were just crying so much.
Oh,
it was...
God.
Ooh,
it was very
lots
bad.
of tears. Yeah.
And Pyrrhus, or however you say his name, Achilles' son, he's such a hateable character.
Here's the thing. He is such an interesting parallel to Achilles, and Achilles in his youth, because we see him at like 12, right?
Yeah.
And then we meet Achilles and Pat meet at like age 12, 13.
Yeah.
And Achilles as a youth was so joyful, so nice, so compassionate to Achilles, or to Pat, to himself.
Yeah.
To Pat and the other boys that he was like higher than because he was the prince. And we see it in the first, like the start of their relationship. He warns Pat that like, hey bud, you're gonna get in trouble.
Yeah.
What are you gonna say? He warns him. He didn't have to do that.
He doesn't have to do a lot of things.
No.
He does not have to throw him that fig.
No.
But he did. Okay.
But like he didn't have to do any of that, and then they went on and he like took him to his little lesson, and then they became companions out of nowhere.
He kind of took
all
it in.
because of this lie.
Yeah.
That wasn't a lie. You know?
And I think it was because his human side was embraced by his father.
Yes.
Rather than Pyrrhus, who
was raised by Thetis, Achilles' mother. And we see how that went downhill.
She kind of raises him like he's a god.
Yes.
And
with
she
that
tells
pride.
him, yes, that you should be prideful. You should hate everyone because you're so much better than everyone. And then he comes into the Trojan War
as a 12-year-old.
And he's like, Briseis, come here, lady. And then Briseis like,
you are my father's slave.
Yeah. You must have had intercourse with her.
Yeah. and Briseis was like, no, that's not how that works.
She's like, sir, your father was gay. So yeah, there was that, and then Briseis tries to kill him, and then he kills Briseis. Sad face.
That was so sad. That was, he treated her awful. Yeah. She tried. She really tried.
And then he refused to have Achilles buried with Pat, which started the entire Thetis' arc, and him not being able to reunite with
He was
Achilles.
like, I know what my father would want. It's my say now. And
you never even met him, sir.
And he was like, but he literally said this.
Yeah.
Like, no, I'm not having his legacy tainted by some random. So that random used to be a prince.
Oh, true. He used to be a prince.
And then he was exiled. Oop.
That's not on him, though. We don't blame Pat.
No,
ever.
he was being bullied. And then Pat is constantly portrayed as this weak kid.
Yeah.
When we see him at age 12, shove a kid who's bullying him, and then he dies. Like, he just dies.
He just hits his head, and he's like, ow, forever.
Yeah. And then he puts on Achilles' armor in his final hurrah, and people believed him. So, like, clearly he was, like, fit enough to be believed that he was Achilles.
Yeah.
People believed him, and then he went and killed a son of Zeus and all of these Trojans.
I think because it was Pat telling the story to Thetis, he downplayed himself.
Aww.
Because he was so insecure. So he was probably the super muscular man.
He trained alongside Achilles, the greatest warrior.
And he killed, like, all these people.
Yes.
It was just that he was so insecure and had no confidence. And also that he was talking to Thetis. He wasn't talking about himself. He was talking about Achilles to Thetis.
The song of Achilles.
Yeah.
Aww. Wait, I never thought about it that way.
Did you know the Iliad? It means the Song of Troy.
Oh, I think I did know that.
So,
but I don't remember.
Yeah, the Iliad means the Song of Troy, and then the Song of Achilles. Aww. Instead of the Song of Troy, it's Pat's Song of Achilles.
Oh,
yeah,
that's so sweet. Oh my gosh, yeah. But the parallels between Achilles' son and Achilles, because of the way they were raised, is a really interesting thing to add at the end.
Yeah,
and then they both died. That was sad.
Very.
Their deaths were good deaths, like solid action
like
right there.
How many people go in the book thinking, "Oh, Achilles is heel." That's all they know about Achilles.
Me. That was me.
Which in Greek mythology, it's because Thetis, when he was a baby, dipped him in the river by his heel, and then his heel was the only part of him that was like indestructible. I like how Madeline Miller didn't really capitalize on that. Like I said, she doesn't really capitalize on his greatness. But when he gets hit with an arrow in the ankle, it's over. Game over.
Yep. Though she does constantly mention his feet.
Yeah, what's up with that?
Which we assume is a nod to the heel.
What's up
but
with
it
that
makes
girl?
it sound like Pat has a foot fetish.
Maybe he did.
Maybe.
Because Pat's one flaw. The one I'm willing to admit, okay?
Because he was like, his good smelling feet.
His red heel and his pink, devilish, lickish feet.
It was a lot. It was a lot, Madeline Miller, but
it was very, like, often, too. It was reoccurring.
Especially when they were young.
Yes.
Especially when they were young. And then the war started. Yeah. And then the last line, we already talked about it. But I think even the last line where, like, they reconnect, but also, where does this end? Go, she says, he waits for you. Was so like, aww,
I like how
for him.
Yeah, I like how she acknowledged their relationship. Like, of course he's gonna be waiting for you.
Yeah.
Because she was kind of unwilling to do that prior.
Yeah.
Speaking of quotes, on to our segment,
Meet the quota.
Well, we'll be telling our favorite quotes. So,
Yes.
Maya, what was your favorite quote in the Song of Achilles?
My favorite quote in the Song of Achilles was, "This I say, this and this, the way his hair looked in summer sun, his face when he ran, his eyes solemn as an owl at lessons, this and this and this, so many moments of happiness crowding forward."
And why? It's a good quote. But do you have justification?
I think because it kind of sums up his memories of Achilles and, I mean, his favorite parts of Achilles.
I'm, like, on the verge of tears right now.
And it's, like, at the end of the book, right?
Yeah.
When they had both died.
He says it a bunch of times, describing Achilles' or
their relationship to Thetis.
The first time it happens, I think, is when they're by the lake, and Achilles is like, have I told you how much I like this, this, and this? And then it became a thing where they're like, this, and this is why I love you, this is why I love you. And so it was really sad.
Yeah.
Anyways, my favorite quote is the very quotable, "I could recognize him by touch alone, by smell, I would know him blind. By the way his breaths came and his feet struck the earth, I would know him in death at the end of the world." Because obviously, it has so much meaning and foreshadowing.
Yeah.
And I feel like it really describes their relationship, like your quote.
Yeah.
Which
Yeah. That was, ooh.
Yeah.
Chills. Madeline Miller, #great author.
For a week after I read this book, I would hear these quotes on TikTok, and I would uncontrollably sob. Like, there was nothing that was stopping me after hearing those quotes.
Yeah.
And realizing their depth and their meaning. Terrible. It was a terrible time.
So we're going to go into another segment. This is Playlist for the Pages. So if you're like us, you have good Spotify playlists that you are constantly listening to while reading. And she actually made a wonderful Spotify playlist for me when I was reading the book. But basically how Playlist for the Pages goes, we have one song we agree on as the Song of Achilles song. And then we have two of our own choices.
Okay.
So, our agreed on song was Back to December by Taylor Swift. As episodes go on, there's going to be a constant Taylor Swift theme.
Of course.
Just so you know.
I feel
Because she's
like
an icon.
her songs are so relatable, and since there's so many of them, you can kind of relate each, especially to stories, because they kind of tell a story in their own.
Especially love stories, because she has written a lot of long
named Love Story.
And a song named Love Story. Yeah. So Back to December is number one song for Song of Achilles. What is your choice?
Okay. It's this French song. It's like a classical music that I found myself going back to while reading the book. It's called J'étais Lazara des Mots. I don't know.
Sure.
It's somewhere there. It's somewhere
French.
like that.
Woo.
I told you I'd butcher all names, and that's including this.
We'll type it, so y'all have it.
You can look it up. I'm sure you've heard it. It's really good. I love it. And it's so sad. And it sounds Greek for some reason. So
Maybe just because it's French.
Yeah, maybe. But it's like, I don't know, it's like Greek tragedy is what I meant.
Oh,
like
yeah,
it's
yeah.
tragic like Greek tragedy. Not like it sounds Greek.
Yeah, that makes sense.
That's not what I meant.
My song is The Archer, again, by Taylor Swift, because she's an icon. And, yeah.
I feel like when I am able to get tattoos, I'm going to get the, like, archery bow tattoo. I was thinking about this earlier. And I feel like people are going to look at the archery bow and be like, oh, The Archer by Taylor Swift. No. The Song of Achilles.
Also by Taylor Swift.
Oh, my God. No, it's not
Madeline
by Taylor
Miller,
Swift.
she deserves the credit.
Yeah, she does.
She's an icon.
Just this one book made me love her.
And it was her debut novel.
That's so crazy to me.
Yeah.
How do you do that?
She's a really
aspire.
good writer. Speaking of Madeline Miller, what's your opinion on her choice to have the story told by Pat?
We kind of covered this when we were talking about the ending, but it makes the ending so much more emotional because Pat kind of has to watch Achilles go crazy. He has to watch Achilles lose his mind and kill himself very slowly because he finds that he wants to kill Hector before he dies himself. And there's nothing he can do to stop him, to save him from killing himself, which is terrible and terrifying.
Yeah. He just has to sit there and watch.
And he can't communicate with him. He feels so helpless, and you get this sense of helplessness.
Speaking of Hector, what has Hector ever done to me?
No. No.
So, before they decide they're going into war, or had they already decided? I don't know. Anyway, Achilles and Pat are talking about how Achilles is going to die after Hector.
The prophecy.
Yeah, the prophecy. So if Achilles kills Hector, then it means Achilles is gonna die. So basically Pat was like, don't kill Hector. And Achilles responds
With a smile.
basically, why would I? What has Hector ever done to me? And kind of laughing, like it was a joke.
It was supposed to be funny.
Yeah. And then later in the book, at the end, I mean, what has Hector ever done to him? He killed Pat, so now they got in trouble.
Now he has a reason. And now he's gonna die. They
Yeah.
both die.
Yeah.
That's terrible.
But them dying means that they can reunite eventually.
Yeah.
That
They
happens
did
at the end,
reunite.
though.
The last sentence.
Oh, yeah.
In the darkness, two shadows reaching through the hopeless heavy dusk, their hands meet and light spills into a flood like 100 golden urns pouring out the sun.
That was an incredible last line.
I like how she gave us closure.
Yes.
Because I needed that. I needed that so desperately. The entire book, well, the second half of the book is just uncontrollable sobbing, and then the last line is so bittersweet.
There were a lot of tears. This book has water damage from Maddie's tears.
I tried to not cry over the book, but it was really hard.
It gives it personality.
And when you're annotating, okay?
Yeah.
So, overall, The Song of Achilles is my favorite book ever.
Yeah. I think it is officially my favorite book now.
I know there's a lot of people who don't like it or are scared to read it because of the ending. I just want to say, technically, it's a happy ending. Technically. It's going to make you cry.
It is technically a happy... I don't think I constitute it as a happy ending.
I wouldn't constitute it as a happy book.
Okay. But it does technically have a happy ending.
Yes.
You're right.
Okay, so don't be scared to read it, okay? I probably should have said this in the first half.
Before the spoiler.
Yeah, but if your friend is scared, just tell him, hey, it's a sad book, but you'll get through it because it's worth it.
Or just lie to them and be like, there's a happy ending, it's gonna be great.
Yeah, I don't know what you heard on TikTok.
Honestly, it is worth all of the pain.
I for sure.
Back to December is like my third most listened to song right now. But every time I listen to it, I want to cry.
It's just so good.
Because I associate it with this book now. But it is worth it. Crying over Taylor Swift will always be worth it.
I agree. Anyways.
Yeah. Thank you for listening to this episode of After the Epilogue. Check out at After the Epilogue podcast on Instagram and After Epilogue MM on Twitter. And
my TikTok.
Which we'll have them all typed out. Up there, we'll have updates and behind the scenes, other book-related content. And After the Epilogue is hosted and produced by...
me, Madeline Glenn.
And me, Maya Ortiz. Thank you guys for watching.
Thank you.
Stay tuned for the next video.
Bye-bye.